Hello, entrepreneurs and Innosphere friends. I'm Emily Wilson, Communication Director at Innosphere Ventures, where today I'm here with Innosphere CEO Mike Freeman, who will be interviewing our entrepreneur guest of the honor, Dave Korsunsky, who is the founder and CEO of Heads Up Health, which just recently closed a 1.35 million seed round that was led by Innosphere Ventures. So a quick overview of what Heads Up is. Heads Up is a seed stage technology company who's engineering an entirely new approach to personal health by integrating clinical lifestyle, self-collected data, I'm sure I'm forgetting things, with personalized analytics and insights. And a little bit of background on this Funded in Colorado series. What this does is we showcase success stories of companies that recently closed a funding round or just completed a successful acquisition. And in these 15-minute interviews, founders will share their lessons learned on attracting and raising capital, provide advice to other entrepreneurs, and explain what worked and what didn't in their capital raise in hopes of helping more companies close financing rounds. And you can watch all of our Funded in Colorado conversations on Innosphere's blog page. And so just to jump right in with this, because we're here with Dave, what I do know is that you have a great tech background. So I am interested in learning a little bit more about you before we get into the fundraising questions, what your background is and really what motivated you to start Heads Up.
Sure. Thank you, Emily and Mike. It's a great honor to be here with you guys today. So my tech background started coming right out of college. I went to work for my uncle, who ran a large systems integrator company in Canada, and kind of threw me in there. And right out of college, I was repairing motherboards and printers and I was always hands-on, ripping things apart, putting them back together, just really, really in deep inside of all kinds of different computer systems. Did that for a while. And then through some other opportunities, I started working on, at that time, what was called storage area networks. And these were, think of it something like the size of a refrigerator, and it's filled with hard drives, terabytes and terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of space. So I would go set these up for large companies all over the United States, Fortune 100 companies. So I spent most of my tech career inside these football field-sized data centers, working on extremely sophisticated equipment for data storage, for building email systems, for running all the business's core enterprise applications. And through actually an opportunity in Boston when I was living out there after wrapping up an MBA, I moved to Silicon Valley and got in with VMware back in the 2006 timeframe, when VMware was still pre-IPO. And they had built something revolutionary in terms of their ability to run an entire server inside of a software container, basically. So I spent 5 years there. They went from, 800 million in annual revenue to over 5 billion in a matter of a few years while I was there. So it was just an absolute rocket ship. So I was spending a lot of time in virtualization and cloud computing. And then I went to work for a big data analytics company. And at that company, what they were doing was they were pulling in over 100 billion data points per day from data centers all over the world, bringing all of this information into Amazon AWS. And that's where they had a team of PhD data scientists and software engineers and designers. And they would find ways to take these billions and billions of data points and surface insights back to a company that could save them millions of dollars. So I kind of got to see the movie, if you will, on how you build these massive scale analytics platforms.
Okay.
Ultimately, now you can think of the human body as not unlike one of these data centers, because there's millions of data points being collected on an individual, sensors, watches, wearables. So we're able to ingest similarly all of that information, and we can start to provide really meaningful insights on it. So that's just the trajectory that got me to this point. I'm sure a lot of the founders you talk to will tell you that everything they did in their life up to the moment that they decided to become an entrepreneur. That was all of the skills you need. I developed them all in the corporate world: hiring, firing, leadership, working with other companies, everything you'd need, all the skills I needed as an entrepreneur, I got in all of those different career opportunities. And I rely on them every single day. So that kind of got me to this point. The decision to do this opportunity specifically was just related to a huge need I saw in the market. First of all, that need applied to me personally. I needed a better way to manage my health informatics. I didn't see those tools existing in the industry in any meaningful way. And I just jumped off the ledge, and the rest is history.
Cool.
Awesome. So you saw the need for in your own life personally, and also from an outsider perspective, we see the combination of a growing focus on health analytics. There's the shift to virtual care and regulatory changes, including the new reimbursement codes for remote patient monitoring. So did these trends also contribute to your motivation to starting Heads Up?
I was doing this way before any of this technology had come out. And everybody told me I was crazy for the first 4 years. And no investor would come near me with a 10-foot pole. I'd go tell them what I was doing and they'd say, "Where's the door?" So, and this was early days of digital health. And we did not have anywhere near the regulatory change that we have today. We did not have any of the incredible consumer-centric sensor technology that we have today. Individuals have infinitely better abilities to analyze their own health using consumer technology than even a doctor today. None of that existed. So we were building this thing just kind of under the radar for years. And now I feel like the industry and digital health have come to just a completely different level of maturity. So it's kind of just, the market is now, I think, really, really at an inflection point, but we were working on this long before that was the case.
Okay. Well, you brought up investors, so let me turn it over to Mike to ask you some more of those questions.
Yeah, thanks, Emily, because I think you're absolutely going down the trail I wanted to steer you down around the fundraise. So you got out in advance of investors in a sense early on. Walk us through the journey from the early days to just closing your last round. Kind of walk us through that process for you. And what steps did you take along the way, do you think, that helped you raise earlier money and then the most recent round? And sort of frame that up as advice maybe for other entrepreneurs who are following in your footsteps here.
Yeah, well, this was my first rodeo, so everything was new to me, Mike. I was about as green as you can be green as doing this. So the first thing I did do when I started building this was I got a good lawyer and incorporated properly and got off on a good start with all the legal paperwork, the stock option agreements. I incorporated as a Delaware C Corp. I set up the ability to use employee stock options as a compensation and retention tool, because that's all you have in the early days. So I really got that framework in place day one. And I used some of my own savings to get a really, really good corporate structure in place and a legal firm that I was going to be able to work with for the next several years. And then I went out and had to figure out what it meant to raise capital. I'd never done that before. I had zero experience, but started reaching out to people from my network in the corporate world who I'd worked with and who had experience with me as a peer and as a leader in technology, and started reaching out to friends and family in my network and raised my first $10,000 on a convertible note that from a former colleague at VMware. And over the course of several years, I just had to continuously keep working on my ability to communicate my passion and my purpose and my mission. And it was really lumpy in those first few years. You get a little cash, keep building the product, get a little more cash. So we did a rolling close, Mike, on our first convertible note over the course of about 3 years. And that just allowed us to sustain ourselves. It was kind of like just-in-time funding, which is super hard and stressful, but that's just how it worked out for us. And that over the course of those years, that's where I learned the skills to continue doing what I do and continue being able to go out there and present myself and the opportunity in the best possible light. And as you know, there's a ton you have to do: preparing financial projections, getting a data room set up, preparing a really solid slide deck, being able to show traction, being able to defend your numbers. So this was just all stuff I had to learn as I was going, and it's just been incredibly rewarding.
So if you had to boil it down to one thing, and that's, I know that's hard, but over the journey of raising the early money and then the more recent round, what's the one piece of advice you would have for an entrepreneur that maybe at the early stages of what you've been through over the last couple of years?
Well, let's see here. I would say the one thing that I would offer is to have complete conviction in what you're doing and your purpose, because you as the founder are going to go into these meetings and you're going to get told no 100 times from people who do this for a living all day, every day. And then you're going to start to question yourself and you're going to say, well, these guys are looking at deals all day and they're all telling me to get lost. And you still in your heart have to believe that you're right and they're wrong, even when that happens 100 times. That's the level of conviction you have to be successful.
Yeah, I love that. So just for the record, I did not prepare Dave for that question. So that was straight from the heart. So no, I love that response, because it, you know, I routinely personally hear for companies we're working with that, you know, one of the, and everybody says it's really hard to raise money, but it's not often translated into at the personal level. You know, massive amounts of rejection is I think for anybody is hard, and it does kind of shake you to your core, you know, in the fundraising process when you're not successful. And I think that's it's hard to describe that to someone who's not been through it. And so I think you did it better than I did. Let me just kind of switch gears here on you and talk to us about how Innosphere Fund and John Smith in particular connected with you, and kind of walk people through the process you went through with Innosphere Fund as the lead, just kind of at a high level. And then, you know, what maybe what additional learning did you have in that process? And, you know, as you look back on that, just having gone through that, if there were, you know, a couple of points, you know, that you might take away that you would, you know, say, hey, here are a couple of things I learned, here are a couple of points I noted that would help other entrepreneurs out. Just walk us through kind of some of the detail of going through the last round of financing you just went through.
Sure. So this was, I think, March, April 2020. The whole world had just had their oh shit moment with the pandemic. Everything was shut down. It was a strange time. Here in Phoenix, Arizona, where we're based, they were having this conference called Unmet. And this event was intended to bring investors from the middle parts of the country. So they were really looking at connecting investors and startups that were not on the coasts in the traditional VC locations, if you will. So this was a big opportunity. We got invited to this conference with a small handful of other startups. Innosphere was one of the groups that was going to be there to do to be at this event in person. So the whole thing obviously got canceled and it moved virtually. So I actually remember I had to create these little 1-minute videos on this mobile app called Thumbraise. And like you had 60 seconds to walk through like each part of your business. So I did all of those, and you just never know. You put a bunch of time in it, but John from Innosphere found us on there. And I think he's like, you were one of the few that actually had a projection slide that looked like it actually had some logic built into it. So, you know, we had a really strong 5-year projection slide. We worked really, really hard on that. And we had some other crisp ones that communicated our piece. So John found us through that platform. And our first few calls, we had a really, really strong connection. His background in the network monitoring and analytics space, I think really helped him see the opportunity to do something similar in healthcare. So we really connected at that technical level. And that first conversation with you guys was April, May, Mike, when I was on the first few calls with you guys. And then we went through we went through the process and had a really, really successful outcome with you guys.
Yeah. So just, you started to just talk about this a little bit, but I think one of the things I've learned, just being still new in investing from the VC side, there's a really important upfront part of the engagement. When investors are meeting with a company, there's a sort of a connection point that's hard to explain exactly why it works and why it doesn't sometimes.
Yep.
And I know, with John leading the charge as the other partner in the fund, I don't want to speak for him, but I kind of heard secondarily, but just talk a little bit more about, what did you see in Innosphere Fund and John in particular that said, hey, this is probably, a path I want to go down to see if I could, be successful with this investor. How would you just describe that? Because I think, again, it's sort of like some of the emotional aspects of raising money in the dark moments, if you will. I think it's underrated, the connection that happens when, early on, that oftentimes leads to a successful outcome. And when there's not a positive connection, oftentimes leads to a negative outcome from the from the entrepreneur's perspective. So I don't know if there was anything that just you can reflect on about your early interactions with John that, just would be worth kind of talking about, and again, advising other entrepreneurs what kind of to look for in an investor that's really aligned to what you're doing.
I think it gets into some of the intangible qualities of starting a business relationship with someone new. And I instantly felt that I had a really strong rapport with John. At the risk of using a really cheesy analogy, it's kind of like a good first date. You kind of know right away. Honestly, right after that first meeting, you're like, that felt really good. And I want to talk to this person again. And the next meeting felt really good. And the calls with you guys felt really good. So it was more just about, I guess, the intuition side of it, if you will, early on. That felt like it was a really good connection. And then the second part of it was just also knowing that John had such an incredibly strong background in his career that could be immensely helpful for us. And so that was, to me, wow, this is someone I want on my board.
Mm-hmm.
And this is someone I want as a mentor. And so those were some of the early indicators, if you will, where it just all felt really good, really smooth, really natural. I wanted a strong partner to come in and do this, and a strong partner that knew our opportunity. And that's what we got. A lot of the times you'll speak with groups that are really, really interested, but they may not have the subject matter expertise or the domain expertise to really, really help accelerate your journey. So I think we kind of got all of that with you guys.
So last question for me, then Emily's going to wrap up. 2021, we're obviously have come out of a extraordinarily bizarre, strange, difficult year, 2020. What are the big things on the horizon for heads up in 2021, do you think?
Well, we just see an absolute explosion in patient-generated healthcare. And we see individuals now empowered with incredibly powerful technology to monitor and optimize health in ways that have never been done before. And we're seeing more practitioners come on board with understanding the value of using this consumer technology. So we just see an absolutely beautifully timed opportunity, and the opportunity to take everything we've been working on for the last 4 years. I think it's really the one, it's time for this to really accelerate. So I think everything's lining up in terms of just regulatory, market opportunity. I just think we'll be able to rapidly accelerate everything we're doing. Emily touched on a couple of those points. I'll just reiterate them here. But post pandemic, finally, the healthcare system said, "Okay, telehealth is a good idea. We're on board." And it really took the pandemic to force it, because you've got these old stodgy industries that are like, "No, the patient has to be in the office in order for me to bill this thing and take his blood pressure." And it's like, well, that patient probably has a better cuff than you do at home. And so, and can do that all remotely. And so now we have the industry starting to provide the reimbursements to support this model. So I think that's going to accelerate. That's the remote patient monitoring opportunity. It's incredible to see lifestyle medicine gaining more traction. People really starting to want to make healthy lifestyle choices and get engaged with technology. There's very, very non-technical people out there that are using incredibly powerful technology to manage their health. So it's exactly what I'd hoped would come to fruition in terms of the market opportunity for this coming year.
Very
That's great.
exciting.
Yeah, you talk about, a perfectly timed opportunity, but at the same time, we can't forget that you've also been working on this for years. So obviously, you know that things don't happen overnight, but it is great how it's come together for you this way, because Dave, as you know, we think your company, the Heads Up platform, will play a major part in new care delivery models. And after, I know after John saw the Heads Up platform, he knew the company was extremely well positioned to lead the digital health analytics transformation and implement precision medicine with your amazing user interface and tools for both patients and practitioners.
Well, the good thing, Emily, in healthcare is the bar is low. If you've ever logged into your doctor's portal, it looks like 1995. So to bring
Windows,
UI,
it's still
UX,
Windows 95, right?
yeah, exactly.
So for everyone, if you're not familiar with Innosphere, we're a commercialization and incubation program and operate a seed stage venture capital fund to accelerate job creation for high-tech entrepreneurs. And we look forward to engaging with you all again in either an upcoming Funded in Colorado episode or in one of our other free entrepreneurial education sessions for founders and CEOs that are building and growing high-tech companies. Dave, thank you so much again for your insight. We really appreciate you talking with us.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Dave.